Section 9 of Great Pirate Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tisto. Great Pirate Stories by Various, edited by Joseph Louis French. Section 9, A True Account of 3 Notorious Pirates. Part 1. A True Account of 3 Notorious Pirates. Howard Pyle, Editor. Footnote: A Contemporary Narrative. From The Buccaneers of America. End footnote. 1. Captain Teach, alias Blackbeard. Edward Teach was a Bristol man born, but had sailed some time out of Jamaica in privateers in the late French war. Yet though he had often distinguished himself for his uncommon boldness and personal courage, he was never raised to any command till he went a-pirating, which, I think, was in the latter end of the year 1716, when Captain Benjamin Hornigold put him into a sloop that he had made prize of, and with whom he continued in consortship till a little while before Hornigold surrendered. In the spring of the year 1717, Teach and Hornigold sailed from Providence for the Main of America, and took in their way a billop from the Havana with 120 barrels of flour, as also a sloop from Bermuda, Thurbar master, from whom they took only some gallons of wine, and then let him go, and a ship from Madeira to South Carolina, out of which they got plunder to a considerable value. After cleaning on the coast of Virginia, they returned to the West Indies, and in the latitude of 24 made prize of a large French Guineaman bound to Martinico, which by Hornigold's consent Teach went aboard of as captain, and took a cruise in her. Hornigold returned with his sloop to Providence, where, at the arrival of Captain Rogers, the governor, he surrendered to mercy, pursuant to the king's proclamation. Aboard of this Guineaman, Teach mounted 40 guns, and named her the Queen Anne's Revenge, and cruising near the island of St. Vincent, took a large ship called the Great Allen, Christopher Taylor commander. The pirates plundered her of what they thought fit, put all the men ashore upon the island above mentioned, and set fire to the ship. A few days after, Teach fell in with the Scarborough, man of war of 30 guns, who engaged him for some hours. But she, finding the pirate well manned, and having tried her strength, gave over the engagement, and returned to Barbados, the place of her station, and Teach sailed toward the Spanish America. In this way he met with a pirate sloop of 10 guns, commanded by one Major Bonnet, lately a gentleman of good reputation and estate in the island of Barbados, whom he joined, but in a few days after, Teach, finding that Bonnet knew nothing of a maritime life, with the consent of his own men, put in another captain, one Richards, to command Bonnet's sloop, and took the Major on board his own ship, telling him that as he had not been used to the fatigues and care of such a post, it would be better for him to decline it and live easy, at his pleasure, in such a ship as his, where he would not be obliged to perform the necessary duties of a sea voyage. At Turniff, 10 leagues short of the bay of Honduras, the pirates took in fresh water, and while they were at anchor there, they saw a sloop coming in, whereupon Richards, in the sloop called the Revenge, slipped his cable and run out to meet her, who, upon seeing the black flag hoisted, struck his sail and came to under the stern of Teach, the Commodore. She was called the Adventure, from Jamaica, David Harriot master. They took him and his men aboard the great ship, and sent a number of other hands with Israel Hands, master of Teach's ship, to man the sloop for the piratical account. The 9th of April they weighed from Turniff, having lain there about a week, and sailed to the bay, where they found a ship and 4 sloops. 3 of the latter belonged to Jonathan Bernard of Jamaica, and the other to Captain James. The ship was of Boston, called the Protestant Caesar, Captain Wire commander. Teach hoisted his black colours and fired a gun, upon which Captain Wire and all his men left their ship and got ashore in their boat. Teach's quartermaster and 8 of his crew took possession of Wire's ship, and Richards secured all the sloops, one of which they burnt out of spite to the owner. The Protestant Caesar they also burnt, after they had plundered her, because she belonged to Boston, where some men had been hanged for piracy, and the 3 sloops belonging to Bernard they let go. From hence the rovers sailed to Turkle, and then to the Grand Caymans, a small island about 30 leagues to the westward of Jamaica, where they took a small turtler, and so to the Havana, and from thence to the Bahama wrecks, and from the Bahama wrecks they sailed to Carolina, taking a brigantine and 2 sloops in their way, where they lay off the bar of Charlestown for 5 or 6 days. They took here a ship as she was coming out, bound for London, commanded by Robert Clark, with some passengers on board for England. The next day they took another vessel coming out of Charlestown, and also 2 pinks coming into Charlestown, likewise a brigantine with 14 negroes aboard, all of which, being done in the face of the town, struck so great a terror to the whole province of Carolina, having just before been visited by Vane, another notorious pirate, that they abandoned themselves to despair, being in no condition to resist their force. There were 8 sail in the harbor, ready for the sea, but none dared to venture out, it being almost impossible to escape their hands. The inward-bound vessels were under the same unhappy dilemma, so that the trade of this place was totally interrupted. What made these misfortunes heavier to them was a long, expensive war the colony had had with the natives, which was but just ended when these robbers infested them. Teach detained all the ships and prisoners, and, being in want of medicines, resolved to demand a chest from the government of the province. Accordingly, Richards, the captain of the Revenge sloop, with 2 or 3 more pirates, were sent up along with Mr. Marks, one of the prisoners whom they had taken in Clark's ship, and very insolently made their demands, threatening that if they did not send immediately the chest of medicines, and let the pirate ambassadors return without offering any violence to their persons, they would murder all their prisoners, send up their heads to the governor, and set the ships they had taken on fire. Whilst Mr. Marks was making application to the council, Richards and the rest of the pirates walked the streets publicly in the sight of all the people, who were fired with the utmost indignation, looking upon them as robbers and murderers, and particularly the authors of their wrongs and oppressions, but durst not so much as think of executing their revenge, for fear of bringing more calamities upon themselves, and so they were forced to let the villains pass with impunity. The government was not long in deliberating upon the message, though it was the greatest affront that could have been put upon them, yet, for the saving so many men's lives, among them Mr. Samuel Wragg, one of the council, they complied with the necessity, and sent aboard a chest, valued at between 300 and 400 pounds, and the pirates went back safe to their ships. Blackbeard, for so Teach was generally called, as we shall hereafter show, as soon as he had received the medicines and his brother rogues, let go the ships and the prisoners, having first taken out of them in gold and silver about 1,500 pounds sterling, besides provisions and other matters. From the bar of Charlestown they sailed to North Carolina, Captain Teach in the ship, which they called the man of war, Captain Richards and Captain Hands in the sloops, which they termed privateers, and the other sloop serving them as a tender. Teach began now to think of breaking up the company, and securing the money and the best of the effects for himself and some others of his companions he had most friendship for, and to cheat the rest. Accordingly, on pretence of running into Topsail Inlet to clean, he grounded his ship, and then, as if it had been done undesignedly and by accident, he orders Hand's sloop to come to his assistance and get him off again, which he, endeavouring